Yes, here we are again, lesson number 114. And today, a couple of people asked about how do you handle a reading when you have to give bad news, which it's an interesting question. I'm sure it's happened to everybody. You turn a card and you don't like the look of it, or you know you have to tell the person, or the card is indicating that things are not going to work out well. How do you express that, or how do you explain it, or how do you talk to somebody about that? So I have a few points that I think are important, and I'm going to go through them. So first is Shakespeare in Hamlet had Hamlet say, "There's nothing good and nothing bad, but thinking makes it so." That may not be word for word, but that's the idea. So it's not that it in a way, it doesn't matter what happens. It's how you think about the experience that makes it either good or bad, or enjoyable or unenjoyable. So rather than think when you turn a card, what have we got here? Maybe you take the strength card upright and you think that's good. Upside down, you think that's bad. So you're going to be weak. You're not going to be able to handle the situation, whatever it happens to be. But rather than think good and bad, maybe what you do is you think about what's the lesson that's to be learned. So let me write down LESSON. That's point number one. So if you look at any particular card, you can think, what's the lesson of the Knight of Cups? Is to be kind and considerate and careful and loving and giving. What's the lesson to be learned with the Knight of Cups upside down? Is don't give in to anger or jealousy or spite or whatever it happens to be. You take the idea of love upside down as being hateful or unkind words. And because a knight's a messenger, I was taught, don't say nasty things to people. So if you have the idea that every card, instead of being good or bad, upright or reversed, it doesn't matter, but instead of the card having a kind of morality with it, a good or bad idea, maybe think about what's the lesson to be learned. And if you look at an experience and try to figure out what's it trying to teach you, what's the lesson here, it changes how you think about what's going on. There's a friend of my wife, she works in a craft store, and a year ago or so, she was out walking and she slipped on ice and broke her right wrist. So she works she actually does framing for people. So she really needs both hands and both wrists to be working. So she broke her right wrist and she's right-handed. So what are you going to do? That's a bad thing to happen, we can say. Whereas if she looks at what's the lesson to be learned, you can't use your right hand, learn to use your left. And so it's the right wrist was going to heal. It was going to take something like 6 weeks. What's she going to do for 6 weeks? Complain and be miserable, or look at it as a lesson. Okay, now it's a good opportunity to learn how to use my left hand. It's because some people are right-handed, some are left. So if you look at a card, not as indicating something as good or bad, but if you can figure out what's the lesson to be learned. The other thing is, if you talk about the lesson of the card, you in a way are planting a seed in the mind of the questioner, so that they're with you during the reading, but then afterwards they go back into their life and into the people that they know and the situations they're dealing with. If you can give them an idea about the lesson to be learned, that's planting a seed in their mind. And when they go back into their life, maybe they'll remember the seed idea that you planted, and it can develop into something positive that gives them the chance to overcome difficulties. Because if you think about it, and it has been said before, you get what you think about. If you're thinking about problems, you're going to get more problems because that's what you're thinking about. You're focusing on problems. It goes back to ages ago in a video where mention was made about the importance of the question. If you say, why am I such a loser? You're going to get 50 reasons why. But if you think, how can I be a winner? You're going to get 50 reasons how you can be a winner. And it starts with you and what you're thinking about. If you're thinking about problems, you're going to get more problems. If you're thinking about how to win or being a winner, you're going to get opportunities. And if you saw Thelma and Louise from many years ago, there's one point in the movie where Thelma says, "You get what you settle for," when she's talking to Louise at one point. And that's quite good, I think, as well, something to remember. And maybe what you do is that can be a seed idea that you give the questioner. You say to them, this is a movie called Thelma and Louise, and at one point Thelma says to Louise, "You get what you settle for," meaning, what are you, the questioner, settling for? Because if you've kind of given up or assumed that you can't do anything, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get situations where you can't do anything because you believe that you can't do anything. So what's the lesson? What's the seed idea? What's your philosophy of life? So philosophy might seem like a big word, O-P-H-Y. I'm running out of space. What's your philosophy of life? So I think what you do is you, the reader, watching this video, but also if you're doing a reading for somebody, you bring the subject around to what kind of thoughts are we thinking, and what do our thoughts tell us about us and what we believe. So the friend with the broken wrist, if she believed that she was stuck for 6 weeks and couldn't do anything, she wasn't going to be able to do anything. She would you get what you settle for. So with your philosophy, the idea of that, spend some time or pay attention to the kinds of thoughts that you have, because that's going to tell you about what you believe. And rather than talking about philosophy, which might be too big a topic for people, maybe think about the idea of the motto. Remember mottos, which is a kind of philosophy contained in a few words. So I happened to, yesterday, I was doing this thing for a website, and I wrote down, or I figured out, or I was going to include the idea of, they say slow and steady wins the race. So if you've got something to do, often you throw yourself into it, or you feel as if you ought to get it over with quickly. And so you rush at it, and maybe you make a mistake and you've got to begin again. But the idea of the motto, slow and steady wins the race. If you, instead of rushing, if you take things easy, take it slow, plan it, organize it, and then steadily apply energy to it, you'll get there in the end, and it'll be a good trip, and you'll enjoy it, and you'll have a successful outcome. So what mottos do you know that you might pass on to the questioner as a seed idea? Slow and steady wins the race. A stitch in time saves 9 as another one that I used to hear about. Because if something is coming undone, if you stitch it up and fix it at the beginning before the tear has begun to take effect, really, you save yourself a lot of work later. So the idea of the motto is that if you attend to important things right now, then you won't have a big problem to deal with later. One other point is, I'm going to write down what's in it for you, if I can do that. What's in it for you? That idea. So this is because a few days ago I was talking to somebody, and my wife has an iPad, and so the person leaned over the iPad, and there was a notification, but the friend thought that the iPad was taking a photograph of her, because when she leaned over the iPad, it happened to open. So she has in her own mind the idea that the iPad is taking a photograph every 5 seconds of where it is anywhere, and the iPad and Apple or whatever is storing all this data, and you get no control over it. So, and the same with iPhone, or with, I think it's Siri. She also thinks that Siri is on all the time, recording every conversation in the room. I don't know who's going to listen to it or how they're going to make sense of it, but anyway, that's what she believes. And so it occurred to me, what's in it for her? Because if we get back what we think about, so the friend thinking that the iPad is taking photographs every 5 seconds, what's in it for her? What's she getting out of that belief or out of that idea? And it may be that she happens to think that she's doomed, but that she doesn't have much control over conditions in the world. And so the iPad taking a photograph every 5 seconds is one more proof that she is powerless, or she is helpless, or there's nothing she can do about it. So maybe what you do with thinking of good and bad is figure out what the questioner or what the person is getting out of the idea that something is bad. So, more to the point about the video is Moonlight Dreams and Kathleen Doyle both emailed or both left a comment about how do you deal with when you've got to give bad news. So Kathleen wanted to know, she said that in the comment that often she'll get questions, or if she get a question about asking for advice rather than a yes or no, she wasn't sure about what spread to use. So she would maybe get a question like, how do I grow? And so I think what you do is, the spread doesn't matter. I think what matters is the question. The question is, how do I grow? You turn the card, the Queen of Swords. That's how you grow. You look at the card not from the point of view of what does it mean, but you look at the card from the point of view of the question is, how do I grow? And that card shows how you grow. You grow by being solid and stable and being at peace and sitting still and having a sword in your right hand. You're not using it, but you're willing to remove what's no longer valuable or useful. And that's how you grow. So I don't think the spread itself matters that much, because you want to know the question wants to know, how do I grow? That's how you grow, by being like the Queen of Swords upright. Whereas, how do I grow? And the Queen of Swords is reversed. How do you grow up? By not being like the Queen of Swords, by not being overly picky and hostile and aggressive or too aggressive with people, because it's a sword, which is a weapon. And maybe what you do is, instead of sitting in judgment over people and circumstances, because she's sitting and she looks like she's judging, don't do that. Because for different reasons why you wouldn't do that. But with this particular question at this time, the answer is, don't be like the Queen of Swords. Don't sit and be judgmental about other people and their behaviour. Partly because you don't know what they're like, or you don't know what made them act the way they're acting. And maybe there's nothing they can do about it. So I think for Kathleen, and maybe for Moonlight Dreams as well. Oh, card got switched over there. If the question is, how do I grow, or how do I do anything? Okay, how do you do anything? Not another court card. How do I do something? No, another court card. How do I do something? Be like the fool. Take a chance. Take a risk. Come down from the mountaintop, because he looks as if he's on his way down. So you've been above everything and looking at, using an overview, or being separate from the situation. And now is the time to get involved, because come down the mountain, from the mountain top where you're isolated into the valley where there are people and there are other things going on. So how do you do something? You get involved with people and circumstances, and maybe be willing to get your hands dirty as well, which means you go hands-on with the situation. Instead of trying to fix it from a distance, you get up close and personal, as they say, and work with everyday reality, or work with moment to moment circumstances. And also, because it's the Fool, maybe you take a risk and you take a chance. And because the card is upright, then if you take a chance, it's going to work out in your favour. If the Fool is upside down, how do you do anything? Don't be foolish. Don't think you can do everything and do anything all the time, because you can't, or you're going to discover that you can't because the Fool is upside down. And so maybe, going back to the earlier idea about isolation, maybe what you do is, step one, how do you do whatever it is you're going to do? Step one is isolate yourself for a bit. Don't spend too much time with people or with the problem, but separate yourself from it for a bit and get new bearing on the situation, or get a new perspective on the situation. Then you're going to find a solution, or then you're going to be able to come back and deal with it properly. So I think the spread doesn't matter, it's the question. So how do you, can't remember the question. What was it? How do I grow? So that's one way of looking at it. The other thing, and the last point I'll make is, you, and I've given you some general ideas about how to deal with the situation, but you being you, what you do is, how do you handle passing on bad news, let's say? And what you do is you shuffle and then you pick a card. So how do you, this is not you particularly, but how do you do it? The Nine of Swords reversed. That's how you personally handle or explain difficult situations. What do we say about the Nine of Swords reversed? What does it mean? How do you handle passing on bad news? Maybe you get people to see, I think it goes back to Shakespeare. It goes back to, there's nothing good and nothing bad, but thinking makes it so. So if you not look in the bright side and pretend that nothing is bad is going on, it's more like being honest about the situation, and you look at it knowing that you can change it by the way you think about it. You're not burying your head in the sand or pretending that everything is okay when it's not, but you accept that you can contribute to the problem, or by changing your thinking, you can make the problem less serious or less difficult to solve. And then that may be what you do today, and then tomorrow you pick another card. Okay, what else could I do or should I do to pass on difficult information or bad situations? The Six of Coins reversed. And I don't know what to say about that at the moment. What do you do? Sometimes if you've got a reverse card and you don't know what to say, turn it upright and say, if it's upright, so how do you pass on bad information or difficult information? You are balanced. He's holding a balance in his hand. So talk about the good and the bad, or you talk about the bad and the good. No, don't just be one-sided and just talk about the bad situation, so that when the card is upside down, just talk about the good. Don't be balanced. Don't give power to the negative. Just talk about the positive. So maybe this goes back to the idea of the lesson. What's the lesson to be learned? And when you've learned the lesson, it's like my wife's friend with the broken wrist. Now she's more ambidextrous because she had a situation where she was forced to use her left hand, and she got quite good using her left hand. so that when her right hand, or right wrist rather, healed up and came back, she was able to actually be ambidextrous, using both hands. Okay, well, that was lesson 114, and quick shuffle to finish up. And I'll be back in a few days. So thanks for watching. If you okay, this question about how do you pass on bad information, or how do you give bad news? I gave you some ideas to begin with, but by all means, tell me more, or explain what you would do, or how you think about the situation, and maybe we'll come back to it and develop more complete ideas about how to handle difficult situations. Okay, so that's it for the moment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a few days. Okay, bye-bye.